Troilus is a past producer in northern Quebec that is getting a new life, and a pretty significant life at that. I'm going to start with a bit of the history because it's very important to understand where we're coming from. Troilus was originally put into production by InMed. In the mid-'80s, Richard Ross was a global base metal producer that wanted the gold multiple. They put forward a North America-wide exploration program. In '86, they made a hit. In '87, they found Troilus. For 2.5 years, they drilled out 5.5 million ounces, and then they gave the keys to the construction team. When they made that transition to development, they stopped drilling. So 30 years plus ago, no more exploration drilling along the belt, under the resource shell, under the reserve shell, stepping out from the pit. This was about putting a mine into production as fast as you can to get the gold multiple. It went into production in 1996. It produced in 2010. It produced 2 million ounces of gold and 70,000 tons of copper. Put into production in a $250 gold environment, expanded once when the gold price went up, but never any capital put into the ground. So when the mine shut down in 2010, Lundin tried to merge with Inmet. The market didn't like it. It failed. First Quantum came in hostilely over top. And it was not for the Troilus gold mine that was shutting down. It was for Corp Panama. And at that time, the deal went through. The base metal assets were a focus for First Quantum and still are today. And what Phil Pascal at First Quantum saw was an exhausted mine with no reserves, running a low-grade stockpile through, and he said, shut it down. Nobody was interested in gold at that time, and if you were watching Malartic, you were watching Detour, you're wondering about Young-Davidson, and it was kind of forgotten about. So my partners and I went in about 3.5 years ago. We took a look at the inferred resource that was left underneath the shell. And after 72,000 meters of drilling in 18 months, which is second in Quebec only to Osisko, I'm going to present to you Troilus, which is now a 6.4 million ounce deposit, predominantly open pit with over $400 million in infrastructure that we think is one of the most exciting development plays in Quebec. Just to give you a layout of the land, there are the two pits. Most of the production came out of Z87 and a little bit out of J4, 350 meters deep and 120 meters deep respectively. There is water in them. There is 30 million cubic meters of water in them, but in 24 months they'll be dry, and I'll talk to you about that. We're actually closing the financing today. Thank goodness we did it 2 weeks ago. We are a $70 million company with about $17 million in the bank. Share price has responded very well, and even today we're just kind of down there somewhere. Really well covered by the street, and fairly tight structure. I put this in very quickly just to say that funding junior companies has been very, very difficult. And what Troilus has been successful at, besides just adding ounces, is actually keeping our company capitalized so that we can drill 72,000 meters during the bad times in the market. So as we come out, we're advancing our project where others are kind of just getting started. I'm proud of many things on this. One, our team owns 10% of the company, and we bought every single share. In fact, our management team over the last 1.5 years we've invested over $3 million of our own money in the market, buying in the market, and we will continue to do so. Second thing I'm proud of is that we have over 25 institutions on our register, and we're extremely pleased that Quebec Inc. is a huge part of that, with the CASE, FTQ, James Bay Investment Board, Sidex, and others, and including our drilling company who bought every share. We're not paying them in shares. So very well held. They've been very supportive over the last 2 years and continue to be. And on our last financing that we're closing today, We only raised $13 million, but we had well over $40 million in demand, which was absolutely exceptional and shows you how they're sticking with us. So, low risk jurisdiction, growing deposit, the infrastructure is a really big point of value for us, and we're growing. I'm not going to talk about the supply deficit because Paulo's already saying them over time. We haven't even started. Quebec. We're in Plan Nord. We're the southernmost development in Plan Nord, which is an $80 billion subsidized development plan for the government over the next 25 years. Those 12 industrial mines and operations are the last 12 that have attempted to be permitted in Quebec. They were all permitted. The variance between 12 and 36 months is not the government, it is the management team. If we change the scope while permitting, it's going to take you longer. And sometimes that's because of capital requirements or unavailability of capital, scope changes, commodity prices, etc. But come to Quebec, permit a mine, and you're going to get to work. We're in the Forêt-Evans belt, 250 kilometers north of this Abitibi thing that produced 300 million ounces of gold. The Forêt-Evans belt is the same age, same metamorphic grade, same rocks. The only difference is, for every 30,000 meters drilled in the Abitibi, there's been 1 meter drilled in the Forêt-Evans belt. That's because we're under 10 meters of till, and the Abitibi's exposed. So from that standpoint, lots of opportunity. When we rolled 5 million ounces last year, the entire belt got staked. And in fact, I think John left. Sumitomo is funding a $30 million drill program immediately south of us right now. Fly to Chibougamau from Montreal or however you can get there. Almost everything's from Montreal. We can drive you to site in an hour and 15 minutes from Chibougamau on Rue Nord and then a quick road into our site. We consolidated 160 square kilometers last year. The J Zone and 87 are the two pits I've showed you. But basically, when Inmet had this in production, it was a brecciated diorite. Find the diorite, there's the gold. What we found through our drilling and more focus on genesis of the deposit is that this is actually a structurally controlled deposit, as you would expect, that it is not genetically tied at all to the intrusions, and it's associated with this large magnetic depleted zone. As such, we've opened up over 50 kilometers of strike length. We found 250 plus mineralized outcrops, and we've had some major discoveries away from the deposit. I'm going to go to this slide because it says a lot of it. This is what's going to help us expedite production. We have a 40-kilometer production-ready road into site that we maintain off of Rue Nord. It costs $1.5 million a kilometer to build. That's our market cap. So everything else I'm going to tell you right now is free. We have 85 kilometers of power line, sole use to site, 3.2 cents a kilowatt hour. Hydro-Quebec replaced the whole line for us this summer. We've put 300,000 with ABB into our substation, 50 megawatt substation, 25 million US replacement cost, ready to go. We have a camp, a 60-man camp. We have offices and everything. Probably even more important is we've just run 2.5 kilometers of power line in between the two pits. We bought a water treatment plant from Eleanor from Newmont. It's installed. We've completed a small EIA on the dewatering of the pits. We've had our community consultations, our First Nations consultations, and we've just got our questions back from COMEX, and they've guided that we'll be dewatering in the spring. That'll be the first open pit in Quebec history to be dewatered. There aren't a lot of pits. Probably most importantly, though, it's an active mining lease, and underneath all these pictures is 6.5 square kilometers of tailings. It is slightly reclaimed, but at 25,000 tons a day, it's also fully permitted. We have 6 years of capacity without doing a lift, and we're inspected 4 times a year. If we had tailings today, we could put it on it. So there's our resource growth. We started with just over 2 million ounces underground. In 18 months of drilling, we're now through 6.4. If you want to know where we plot on the world, we are a low-grade bulk tonnage deposit that is now at the same grade and size as Malartic when it went into production. And we just got there. This is a better one. This is where we are now. That's what we started with. Basically, we had an underground deposit, 2 million ounces at 1.5 grams. It's exactly like Goldex, and that's how we came to market. 50 meters wide, 1.2 kilometer strike length, mass if you take the whole thing. We went down to about 500 meters depth. We had 200,000 ounces under the J zone. Where we are now, the underground resource is down through 800 meters, but more importantly is we've got over 4 million ounces of open pit material at a gram equivalent at less than a 2.5 to 1 strip. In most calculations, that works well below $1,000. This is the distribution of our drilling. I'm going to be perfectly honest. When we got there 2 years ago, we had no clue what we were doing. All we had was an underground ore body that we were told was there. So the blue was 2018 drilling, so we drilled it. Made sure it was there, and then we stepped it down. While we stepped out regionally across the open pit terrain or the ore body. And what we found is we were told there was no ore underneath J4 or the J zone or to the south, and we drilled 92 holes and every one hit. That's what we have now. There's the old Z87 pit. You can't really see J4 under there. We extended the J zone to the southwest. Which one's the pointer? That's that. Right there, 600 meters from surface, 0 strip material, 1.5 grams. All the white on here, we just haven't drilled. We haven't got there yet. We drilled a couple holes. The underground continues out. That's 600 meters off the edge. We took the underground or the open pit at J4, and we showed that the mineralization extended 500 meters. These are whittle shells.
On this whittle shell, where's that hole that you actually hit in the base metal of the VMS subsystem?
Out over here. As we move to the southwest, and I'm a geologist, but the other geologists hate it when I say it gets VMS-y. Start to see a lot more copper. You see some zinc. I think it's a distal VMS deposit, not an Archean porphyry, as Inmet called it, but I also started my career in flin-flon, so I'm biased. This year, you're going to see a lot of drilling here, a lot of drilling here. We're going to drill over 30,000 meters this year. Every diagram should say it's all open in every direction, but here it truly is. We've had great success. This is a 0.3 cutoff. This is circa a gram equivalent. Everybody says, oh, don't worry, we'll raise the cutoff and the ore body hangs together. We go to a 0.6 cutoff. I've taken the underground off. We're now 1.1 gram ore body. The first slide I showed was about a 2.5 to 1 strip. Here we're looking at about a 3 to 1 strip, which again is open in all directions, but let's go to a 0.9 gram cutoff. It's a 1.5 gram ore body. You're looking at about a 3.8 to 1 strip. The white areas coming in are not a function of no ore, it's a function of drill density, and we'll get to it. So the thesis holds true, it continues to grow. Really interesting, and why Quebec and Canada is so great to explore. We started a program. We're investing $750 over 3 years. Laval's matching it, Western's matching it, NSERC's tripling it, and then giving it back to us as a tax credit. Our drilling last year and over the last 2 years showed some really high grades. 4 grams over 20 meters, 2.7 over 42, and then, press release grades after that. What you find, and this is Neil Banerjee in our pit. Look at that quartz vein. The Troilus ore body always reported 10 to 15% higher grade every ton that went to the mill. And they always in the descriptions we get, there were jewel boxes and other things. Well, what we quickly found was that this mineralization is associated to a secondary reworking, remobilization, that comes in perpendicular to the main ore body. Most importantly to us, it's identifiable, it's replicatable, and over every section, it's now predictable, and it'll come into our model. I show this only for Inmet people, if they're in the room. we were told there was nothing under the J4 pit, and 1.3 grams over 64 meters. It's not that they didn't do they did bad work, they just didn't do the work, and it was more of a corporate focus. The underground is strong. We have a $7 million, 450 meter ramp into the underground. At a 1.2 gram cutoff, we have 1 million ounces at 2.5 grams that could supplement production. Where we are now, that's the south. I've talked about it. I'm just going to talk a little blue sky, and then we can move on. The southwest zone right here, we put out results about 2 weeks ago. Taking our new model, applying it to the south, 3.5 kilometers away, we drilled 2.3 grams over 24 meters. All 7 holes we drilled hit what we consider to the north, ore grade and thickness. We have 2 drills turning there now. We're drilling 5,000 meters. And if you take the strike length between the 2 pits and move them to the southwest, we've identified a larger zone of mineralization than that. Could be pretty exciting. Our interpretation is that the J4 and Z87 deposits are not faulted apart. They are folded on top of each other through tight isoclinal folds, and that folding continues all the way to the south because we are seeing the foliated J4 horizon here and the massive Z87 horizon there. And look how this ore body went right around the tailings pond. That was absolutely perfect. These are just a couple of the sections that we put up from that drilling. Most importantly, for you to take away from that, is there's lots of gold, and it's all shallower than 200 meters. And that's really important. First Nations, the first IBA ever signed in the James Bay Accord was between Troilus and Mistissini. The majority of the Cree miners at Eleanor, at Stornoway, that are going on toward Nemaska and throughout Val-d'Or were Troilus trained. We signed a pre-development agreement with the chief at Tim Hortons on the back of a napkin, and then gave it to a lawyer. But it's basically 5 principles: employment, training, social acceptance, environment, and contracting. And those will all set the stage into our IBA. We're cheap. Everybody's cheap. But I think we're a fairly new company to the market. Until we started working with Red Cloud, we did not have any retail exposure at all, and our shareholders just kept us going. What you're going to see from us is a number of things. You're going to see probably 35,000 meters of drilling this year. From the southwest around the mine, and then exploration to the north, which I didn't even talk about today. You're going to see permitting from the dewatering, which will be proof of concept and government acceptance. As well, you'll see that we're well advanced on a pre-feasibility. We're moving through the PEA. We're going right to a pre-feasibility today, and we expect to have that towards the end of the year. A great team. Daniel Bergeron ran the logistics for Eleanor. Jacqueline LaRue basically permitted all of them. Bertrand works with Blake, who have found 4.5 million ounces. And I wanted to spend a little time on our board, and then I'm done, Paulo. We brought Andrew Cheadle in, who not only has had a great career in junior mining and as CEO of the PDAC, but ran Musselwhite for a number of years. We all know Jamie Horvat, who is at AGF, Sprott, M&G. And then probably worth mentioning are our 2 new board members. Dr. John Hudgerio, he was the head of mining at Laval. He's now the Lassonde Chair at the U of T. And even more important than that, his consulting company does the external engineering reviews for LaRonde and for Malartic. And then Eric Lamontagne is running the Greenstone JV right now. Engineered and built Meladina Meadowbank, and before that he was the last GM at Troilus when it shut down. And we're not sure if he was fired or if he quit. He said he left because he knew there was 20 years left, and they didn't listen to him. I heard he was fired because he put that ramp into the underground and didn't ask for permission. So one of the two, either one's good for us. I love the Lassonde cycle. We're in 2 places, and so maybe at times it gets confusing. We're exploring and we're adding ounces, and the excitement's there, But with all that infrastructure we have, we're driving development at the same time. So hopefully good things to come. And I've talked about all that. Thank you very much.